Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. We are reading the book Christianity and the Great Deception. Let's get started. Chapter 12, Christmas. Alright, Christmas, the birthday of the sun. It should be obvious to any student of the Bible, or even any casual reader, that Christmas was never mentioned by Yahusha the Messiah, or his disciples, or the apostles, or anywhere in the Bible at all. It is common knowledge among the scholars that the date of December 25th, for Christmas, was selected in order to correspond with the Roman festival of Del Natalis Sol Invicti, or birthday of the sun. This should come as no surprise, as Christianity as a whole, all of its fundamental doctrines, and every holiday is founded in ancient Babylon. Babylon worship of the sun. The Phoenician calendar of 354 AD gives a festival of Natalis Invicti on December 25th, curiously, not soon after the Council of Nicaea. There is limited evidence that this festival was celebrated before the mid-4th century AD. No evidence it was celebrated by anyone in the Bible. Sun worship is overwhelmingly obvious in Christian history. In the image to the left, we see the Pope with his Isis Horus Sev, on his back within the blazing sun. He is placing a monstrous sun symbol on the heart of Mary. Isis was renamed Mary. This is classic Babylonian sun worship. In the 5th century, Pope Leo I the Great spoke of how the celebration of Christ's birth, Jesus' birth, not Yahusha's, coincided with the sun's position increasing in the sky in several sermons on the Feast of the Nativity. Here is an excerpt from this 26th sermon. But this Nativity, which is to be adored in heaven and on earth, is suggested to us by no day more than this when, the early light still shedding its rays on nature, there is born in upon our senses the brightness of this wondrous mystery. Mystery religion. That sounds, word for word, what the Babylonian Queen Ishtar said, according to the 1967 New Catholic Encyclopedia, a standard library reference, in an article on Constantine the Great. Besides, the Sol Invictus had been adopted by the Christians in a Christian sense, as demonstrated in the Christ as Apollo Helios in a Mausoleum circa 250, discovered beneath St. Peter's in the Vatican. Indeed, from the beginning of the 3rd century, Son of Justice appears as a title of Christ. A scribe annotated a manuscript of a work by Syrian Bishop Jacob Bar Salibi in the 12th century as follows. It was a custom of the pagans to celebrate on the same 25th December the birthday of the sun, at which they kindled lights in token of festivity. In these solemn nights and revelries, the Christians also took part. Accordingly, when the doctors of the church perceived that the Christians had a leaning to this festival, they took counsel and resolved that the true nativity should be solemnized on that day. What more evidence do we need? I mean, it's right there. This church is pagan, 100%. There's nothing to do with Yahusha, the real Messiah. When was Yahusha born? Now that we have demonstrated the pagan festival roots of Christian holidays, especially Christmas, let us explore exactly when the Messiah was born. When we do, we find that the ordained times feast cycle outlined by Yahuwah proves to be true. These feasts are rehearsals for his plan of salvation through the Messiah. The Feast of Passover was a shadow of the Messiah's sacrifice. The Sabbath, his resurrection. The Feast of First Fruits, his offering of those who rose from the grave on Passover when he was executed. The Feast of Pentecost, Shabbat, his sending of the Spirit of Yahuwah, writing the law on our hearts, not abolishing it. The Feast of Trumpets, his return. The Day of Atonement, his liberating and atoning for creation. The Feast of Sukkot, his birth, and then the beginning of his kingdom on earth for 1,000 years. These appointed times were identified by the Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, as shadows of things to come, spiritual to physical parallels concerning Yahusha the Messiah. They are physical rehearsals of the actual future fulfillment of the plan of Yahuwah through his Messiah, Yahusha. There was no ordained time called Modium in Hebrew for a feast during the month of December, not one. The Messiah was born during the feast of Sukkot, or Tabernacles. The truth in the Bible and historical facts prove Yahusha was born during Sukkot, beginning of fall, not December. The Christian church is in complete darkness to every aspect of Yahuwah's plan of salvation, as the false religion has literally robbed those who follow it of vital truths found in his ordained times, holy days. Wow, this is amazing. If we are obedient to Yahuwah's law and kept his feast as commanded, we would never have been misled by the false Messiah, Jesus Horus Krishna, aka, I hate saying his name, Jesus H. Christ. We would never have committed such abominations as Christmas, Good Friday, Easter, Sunday worship, Valentine's Day, Halloween, etc. We would have recognized immediately that the image of Jesus H. Christ is the Trinity Sunday Easter pig, and known right away it was an abomination to Yahuwah in name, deed, and ritual. Let's look at the Bible and historical evidence surrounding the birth of the Messiah that proved that Yahuwah's feast cycle was truly a shadow of the coming Messiah. Shepherds do not abide in the fields in December with their sheep in Israel, not 2,000 years ago and not now. It is well known that shepherds stay in the shelters starting in November with the arrival of the rainy season. If you know what the star of Bethlehem is, Jupiter, then you know when the nativity was. The Magi told Herod the time the star appeared, and Herod killed infants 2 years and under in response. That means the Magi were tracking the king's star for 2 years because Herod didn't stop from killing his own children and his favorite wife for Josephus. In fact, Josephus says that Augustus, Caesar himself, remarked that he would rather be one of Herod's dogs than one of his children. So for Herod to go back 2 years and kill any of his own children going back 2 years was proof that the Magi had been seeking the Messiah for 2 years. The only star of kings that Magi would have known was Jupiter. Magi refers to Zoroastrian priests from either Babylon or Persia, Iran or Iraq, both of which are east of Israel and both track a triple conjunction of Jupiter, the king's planet, and Saturn, the savior planet for the Jews, and Aries, the zodiac sign for Syria and Israel in their mythology. Zoroastrians had the myth that their version of Messiah, called Solis in their scriptures, would have been born in the West, in a foreign land. When the triple conjunction, along with a comet and other things, all began in 7 BCE, they knew they had to grab the incense and go. Jupiter even went behind the sun and died, was invisible for more than a year. It emerged triumphantly from behind the sun in mid-6 BCE and tracked west for 4 months, pausing over Bethlehem on or about September in about 5 BCE. As if it isn't compelling enough, remember Luke tells us in Zechariah, John the Baptist's father served 15 months in the temple before Messiah was born. Luke gives us the name of the course. In Luke 1:5, guess what? We know when Ajubai served during this time, and when we add 15 months, it comes again to September 5th, 5 BCE. Comes to September in 5 BCE, before Common Era. Likewise, we can date the first census of Quirinius as well. As Romans counted folks every 14 years, people in Egypt, like Joseph and Mary, were forced to return to their ancestral homes to pay the tax. This is verified in the Bible. It is not open to interpretation. Luke and John since on the same year for the beginning of Messiah's ministry. How do we know that? For 6 years, from the beginning of Herod's temple and the 15th year of Tiberius, bring us to the same year. Co-regencies were counted as part of Roman rule, so Tiberius co-ruled with Augustus starting in 12 Common Era. Josephus says Herod began building the temple in 19 before Common Era. Then Luke says Yahusha was about 30 when he began his ministry. By this clock, he would be 30 years exactly in a few months. There were no rooms in the inn actually tell us a lot as well. One time a year during the fall feast of Israel had to travel to Jerusalem to make sacrifices on the Day of Atonement. Bethlehem is a suburb of Jerusalem, and the city of Jerusalem would fill up with travelers from across the land. People would then stay in the surrounding town if there was room. This is what is recorded in the Gospels. That is why Joseph and Mary were in Bethlehem to begin with, and why there was no room in the inn. The Roman census was conducted over a period of 3 to 5 years, not all on one day. So Jews came and went through Jerusalem to pay taxes over a period of 3 to 5 years. There was never one single day when all the Jews gathered to pay taxes. The manger scene is also a telling piece of evidence. The Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, follows the Day of Atonement. During this time, all of Israel, after visiting the temple, would pitch their sukkah or tent and celebrate the week-long festival. When Joseph and Mary could not find a room in the inn, they stayed in their tent, and they had brought with them. It was not a manger with animals. It was their tent and their own animals traveling with them. But again, our lack of knowledge concerning the Hebrew roots of the true faith is severely lacking, so we are easily led astray. Wow, interesting. Recently, the high priest of Dagon, the Pope, even admitted their entire pagan calendar is off because the real birth date of the Messiah was years prior to what they teach. There's a source here for that, and I've read it, and it's true. Pope says Christian calendar based on miscalculation. Here's the article. Jesus was born earlier than previously believed. Not Jesus. Messiah was born earlier than previously believed, meaning the Christian calendar based on the year of his birth is off by several years, the Pope argues in his new book. The book Jesus of Nazareth, which actually is Yahusha the Nazarene, the infancy narratives, is on sale now around the world with an initial printing of 1 million copies. In it, the head of the Catholic Church asserts that the Christian calendar is based on a miscalculation because Yahusha was born sometime between 7 and 2 BC, the Telegraph reported. The calculation of the beginning of our calendar based on the birth of Yahusha was made by Dionysius Exiguus, who made a mistake in his calculation by several years. Pope Benedict writes, the actual date of Messiah's birth was several years beforehand. There is a simple introduction to when the Messiah was actually born. There is much more detailed studies proving he was born during Sukkot, September. I suggest everyone who is interested to do their own independent study. I recommend this link here. Alright, thank you for tuning in, and come back for chapter 13, everyone. God bless. Shalom.